today? No petitions. So that brings us nicely to item 7, which is the Water Zone Committee's terms of reference. And you might remember that this came to us in November. We had quite a discussion about this. ECAN have confirmed the terms of reference on the 10th of December, and this originated from the mayoral forum in 2019 to have this review, because things kind of change along the way with the zone committees that have been in place since I think 2010. So I'd like to welcome Emma and Diane to the table, and would you like to just do a brief introduction on where we're at with this, please?
Yes, so as you indicated, the process has been ongoing for the last year or so, and you would have seen discussions again in November about some draft generic terms of reference, as well as looking at letters of shared priorities. So that was both those items were agreed to at the November meeting. Since then, ECAN has received a report on draft terms of reference, which they have adopted. The next stage of the process is for all of the district councils then to receive those generic terms of reference and go through the same process of considering them and hopefully adopting them. And again, these are for generic terms of reference. They're not specific to any particular individual zone committee, because they refer to, there's blanks in terms of the areas and that type of thing, and the names of the specific district councils, etc. So these are just generic terms of reference. The big change between the current terms of reference and the ones in front of you have to do with the zone committees being more on the ground in terms of how they operate and what they do. So for example, the current terms of reference call for the zone committees to meet, I believe it's 8 times a year for public meetings. That's been dropped down to at least 4. That doesn't mean that they'll only do 4, but they only have to do 4 in terms of the terms of reference. That allows the zone committees a lot more time to be working with interested parties in the community to basically promote water issues within their zones and being a lot more hands-on. And I think I'll just leave it there. If there's any questions or comments.
Right. We did have a question around whether Christchurch could have a representative on Waimakariri, for example, due to the nitrate issue that's looming there. And so do you have a response to that? Well,
as you probably are aware, the current terms of reference, as well as the new ones, both say the same things in terms of the territorial authorities' representation on the various zone committees, and so it's based on the location of the zones. And the Waimakariri zone does not include any part of Christchurch, so on that basis, then we wouldn't have a representative. In terms of whether or not there's been a formal request to have a representative, as best I know, that request has not been made to ECAN, and I would imagine it would need to also go to Waimakariri if that was a proposal.
Yeah, and possibly a better way is just to work through the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee and their relationship with the Waimakariri Zone Committee, and our representative on Christchurch West Melton, being James Daniels, can keep us in the loop about that particular issue. That's probably a better way to do it.
Yes, in terms of the issue around nitrates, as you may be aware, the 2 or 3 years ago, the Waimakariri Zone Committee did an addendum to their zone implementation program, which is basically a series of recommendations for issues within the zone, one of which had to do with nitrates in groundwater and surface water. And those recommendations were passed along to ECAN, which then used those recommendations to help develop that portion of the Canterbury Land and Water Regional Plan that has to do with the Waimakariri zone. So that was part of Plan Change 7, which, as you know, we did make a submission on. There were hearings on Plan Change 7 in November and December. They've just been published, the staff recommendations from ECAN on the submissions that were received. But there has been, at this point, the hearings are over. The last hearings were, I think, the first or second week in December. So the commissioners have not yet released their decisions. So we're not, we don't know where that's going to be yet in terms of nitrates. But in terms of specific recommendations around rules and that type of thing, it's the zone committees, in a sense, already had their say in that process.
That's right, and it's been a good process.
I mean, one opportunity could be that we share the agenda and the minutes from the Waimakariri Zone Committee meetings, and then that would give us visibility of what's coming up on the agenda. And then we were thinking, then there could be an opportunity to sort of invite, get a briefing if there was a particular area of interest.
Yeah.
So that might be a step in sort of closer engagement without necessarily asking for a formal representative.
I think that's the way to go. Sarah?
Thank you. Just checking the new freshwater standards. Did they have to be taken into account as well with the Plan Change 7 hearings? Because they came out before the hearings.
Yeah,
Because it was quite different to what had been put forward in the zipper.
Correct. So the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management came out after the draft Plan Change 7 went out for consultation. That being said, there was some discussion at the hearings about that. So on the one hand, my recollection is that the commissioners would be aware of what those changes are because they are different. Nitrates, to the national bottom lines for nitrates is quite different now under the NPSFM 2020 as opposed to the current one.
Can you tell us what they are?
I don't. Sorry, I don't have those memorized.
Just say, are you able to circulate the staff recommendations being made public?
Yeah, they're on. They just were released on ECAN's website.
Are you able to just circulate the feedback on the Christchurch submission just to us, just for our information?
Or
is it?
I'd have to go through the report and look for references to the feedback. So this is basically the staff, ECAN's staff response to what came up during the hearings.
Yeah.
So it's, and like I said, the commissioners have not yet released their determinations yet.
We'll see how that goes. Keep us updated.
Yeah. Has he sent us resolutions from? Oh, it's not on mine. Oh, there. Well, that's. Any other questions there? We sort of wandered off the terms of reference for the Zone Committee, but I allowed that because it was actually good to have that update, and it's an interesting process. Are there any other questions on the Zone Committee terms of reference? Sam?
Just one quick one. So with the meeting and remuneration guidelines around the remuneration for each one, the youth appointments, would they be considered appointed members as well?
That's my understanding.
So they'd get paid the 4,000 as well?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Jimmy.
If the Three Waters reform, the bill, if eventually approved by the government, whether these terms of reference will be considered revised again or not?
No, that's a completely separate process.
Separate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Second question is regarding to the yellow line part. You point out still the district council, no any the city council on there. So you have the yellow line here.
Oh, okay, let me
It's
just.
district, it's not a,
What
no
page,
any
Jimmy?
city. Quite a few page.
If it's within the terms, the generic
Yeah,
terms of reference,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
So what will happen is,
Yes.
assuming that, each of the, district councils approve the generic terms of reference, what'll happen is then, the specific terms of reference for each zone committee will then be completed.
Yes.
And where it's yellow, where it might say, right now it just says XX Runanga, for example, that will be for each zone committee, that will be the specific Runanga, the specific district or city councils will be filled in. So we'll
Okay.
see those individual ones
I understand.
in
Yeah.
due course.
Okay, thank you, yes, okay, thank you.
So fill in the gaps. So just, we've just got an additional, it's a bit of a note really there, number 2, and that relates to 5.8 on the agenda on page 16. So that just indicates that our request to actually be able to have an alternate in the future, once we get down to the specific terms of reference.
The alternate.
So no other questions? Have a mover for this? Jimmy, like to move it. Melanie seconded. Any debate or discussion? All right, well, thanks for all the work. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye.